What's going on, everybody? Welcome on to the CFCDP YouTube channel. As you can see, I'm with a guest today to talk about the Chelsea-Tottenham game. I got Brittany here with me. You most likely know her from football Twitter. She is one of the standouts on there. Brittany, thanks for coming on. Obviously, we're here to talk about that other team from London, the non-relevant Europa Conference League-ish team. So what's going on?
Hey, thank you for having me and be our little brother.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you their name. They're pretty irrelevant.
So we're going to talk Chelsea-Tottenham today. First, what I wanted to do is kind of do a little bit of recap from the Zenit game, because I think that these two games are going to kind of go hand in hand, because Tottenham does their best work against really good teams that possess the ball a lot, and they sit back in a similar shape as Zenit. So my first kind of question is, do you think that that's what they're going to do against us, is kind of sit back and try to counter us? I think that Man City tape that we saw from them in the very first game when they beat Man City is a pretty good mold of how they're going to play against us. So do you think that, I mean, that's probably the only way they can win, right? Or at least get a draw, a result.
A result for them, I think. And just looking back at, even from the very beginning from Man City on, their only different formation from a 4-3-3 came, I believe, against Palace, and they went with a 4-4-2, which if they go with a 4-4-2, it's going to be very similar to Zenit shape-wise, where Zenit played, I think, a 5-4-1, if I'm not mistaken, and were able to close down that middle. Whereas, so if you look back at our game against Aston Villa, Villa played a 4-3-2 or 4-3-3, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And we were able to use those middle channels. And if they're playing a defensive heavy side, it's going to be very, very hard for us to break that down unless we have that creativity aspect. So I think especially when it comes to starters, Havertz and Mount for me are a lock, along with Lukaku. That's probably our three best front. And I think if we have those three on the pitch at the same time, it shouldn't be an issue. But I would imagine that Tottenham would set up in a 4-3-3.
And I think you're exactly right. And when you look at those front three of Havertz, Mount, Lukaku, especially against Liverpool in that first half, you saw a really good chemistry starting to begin between the three, excuse me. And I kind of discount the Arsenal game because I think Arsenal just really didn't know what they were doing at all. There was just so much space. But one thing that I would like to mention is that I think when it comes to Chelsea breaking down that Tottenham defense, I think what's really going to be crucial is those wing backs. Because if you look against Zenit and you see the inactivity of Marcus Alonso and Reece James to take a guy off the dribble, there was just way too much back passing for me. And overall, when you're looking at how you're going to break down a low block, you're going to have to penetrate it at some point, and people are going to have to make runs. So you look at how Chelsea's lined up for the majority of the Zenit match, from the first minute to about the 63rd minute, they were almost in 2-5-3 or 3-5-2 almost, because Ziyech was sliding back into that 10 spot in the middle, and Mount and Lukaku were playing as like dual strikers up top, which kind of confused me. It's sort of like, I see what he was trying to go for, but I think when you put Mount in that situation up top, I think that really takes out like the best part of his game, when he can make those runs when the ball is, in like the half court, so to speak, and they're able to try and break that down. I thought there was a lot of spatial issues in that game. I think the way that they were trying to get Lukaku the ball, which is fine at his feet, but Zenit often had a second center back coming right over to him immediately when he got that ball. So Lukaku has to make that run, make that patch or the switch of play really quick. And it wasn't similar to like how Arsenal defended it or even how Liverpool defended it. So having Mount up front, it wasn't the correct space for him to be able to find that angle for Lukaku to make that pass and move on forward. So I think it's going to be different. And I can see that if Tuchel's going to definitely employ a little bit different of a strategy, perhaps the traditional 3-4-3, looking to break down Tottenham.
I could see that, but I think a lot of the issue that arises when you play Ziyech and Mount at the same time, they want to occupy the same space. And that's the biggest issue. It creates that, I guess, almost a dual 10 role in a sense, because Ziyech has a tendency to come inwards towards the middle of the pitch, and that's exactly where Mount occupies. So I've always said that I would really love to see, and obviously Tottenham isn't the place to do it, but I would almost love to see a Lukaku Werner at the very top, just to try to, especially with our wingbacks. I think personally, seeing, I don't mind James as much being on the right-hand side, but I would love to see Chilwell come in, because I think what Ben does that Marcus doesn't is has such a future sight vision, and Alonso doesn't really have as much of that. So when you're going, especially down the left side with Chilwell there, you get more of that creativity on the left side. And especially when you have players like Havertz, like Pulisic, or even Cho, when he's on that left-hand side above Chilwell, you get so much more of a creative picture and the ability to cross that ball in and give you more of a finishing product. Like we've had against Zenit, we had 11 shots on goal. Against Aston Villa, we had 12. But when it came to on target, it was such a difference. Like we had 2 on target versus Zenit. When you don't have that creativity coming from the back all the way forwards, it creates an issue. And I think that's why, especially versus Tottenham, who is going to be defensive heavy, Tuchel needs to go for somebody like Chilwell and look at that shape and say, we need creativity and the ability to utilize the wings. Because Tottenham's, at least from what I've seen of them play, Tottenham can struggle a lot going from, or cutting off the passes from wings inward.
Yeah, and I agree with you completely. I think that Chilwell definitely brings an entirely just kind of different aspect to that left side, and he does work really well at getting that left winger that's kind of the position, I guess, involved a little bit more than Alonso. Alonso just kind of likes to take his control on the left side, and he's the orchestrator of it. And I don't think that's necessarily the best thing for Alonso to be the orchestrator of that left side, just because I don't think his decision-making is really the best from time to time.
I also think he struggles defensively many times. Like he almost plays as more of a left wing position instead of a left wing back, and he struggles a lot of time to want to get back, and he's not a great defender. I can't lie, he's not.
And then I just don't think he wants to defend either. I think, and especially with how high that we play our wing backs, you have to have 2 guys there that want to be able to get back and defend. Not say, oh, well, I have to get back and defend. Well, if I'm a little late, then whatever. We have a solid back 3. They'll cover me, no problem. You have to have those guys that are going to be running up and down those channels and being able to get forward and back. And I couldn't agree with you more. And I think creativity is just a massive part of it. I'd like to see Reece James. I have him penciled in to start at right wing back. I'd like to see him be a little bit more creative, get the balls into the box, especially if we're going to be crossing it into Lukaku and whatnot. I also think he has opportunities to take guys off the dribble and get lower on that goal line and, make passes and get in. You're going to need creativity, and I think Tuchel's going to be preaching that throughout the week. But we have to say that Tottenham will not probably be at full strength. There's a lot on their injury and kind of COVID list still from the international break. It appears that Davis and Sanchez, Lo Celso, and I don't remember the other one.
I think I have it written down.
Romero.
Yeah. I know it's one of those.
Yeah. So those 3 guys are going to be back, and it's going to be super exciting to see how, I guess, they're put back into the squad. But then they're going to miss out. They're potentially going to miss out on Dyer and Son, who say they're trying to be able to get back for the Chelsea game. Son and Dyer were not involved in their Europa Conference League squad today, so that was not a good telltale sign for them. And it's going to be really hard for them coming back from Thursday to Sunday to get ready for the game. So we might see a little bit of a depleted Tottenham side, as well as Tanganga, who had the red card. I mean, I have to think that would be lean towards Tottenham sitting back even more because they don't have that effective offensive, those players. I mean, even if Son does play, they're still going to be missing a couple people.
Well, and even then, like looking at some of their stats and just in general who their most productive players are, the fact that a lot of their players that are the most productive are defensemen is kind of concerning. And like obviously you have Kane and Son who are up there in the productivity, but why is Region one of your most productive players as a defenseman?
Yeah.
And so I think with the way that we've played against teams who have been more of a through the back type of a play style, we've done very well with that. Obviously, we've kept clean sheets through the entire season, so to speak, so far, except for against Liverpool, which, I mean, 10 men, I don't want to say it's self-explanatory, but
yeah, it is what it is.
Down, it's a little bit more of a challenge, an uphill battle, so to speak, to play that defensive role as well as you do with a full strength squad. And I think with people coming in and starting like, a Harry Winks or I think his skipper, their new signing, I think he's their new signing, who aren't as strong as somebody like Lo Celso, Hoberg. Tanganga plays defense, but tends to step into that midfield role, or somebody like Dembele. When you're pairing like a Dembele and a Harry Winks, you don't like Harry Winks, yes, plays defensive midfield, but Dembele almost plays the same, and so they don't really have that structural formation to be able to play through the middle the way that they would like to, and I think that's going to really hurt them if they don't have those players, especially with somebody like Son missing and only having Kane there. And while Dele has been playing very well, I don't think he can give Kane the service, only just having Kane, so to speak, up there. So I think that's going to be one of their biggest drawbacks and challenges that they're going to have to overcome is that ability to play to two very powerful forwards.
Absolutely. And I think that like when you look at Tottenham's season thus far, you've seen 3 Premier League games, 1-0 where they win. And then you have the Crystal Palace game, which is 3-0, obviously with the red card. And I think it was 0-0 when the red card happened. So, if anything, they know how to keep their shape. And I don't think that you can deny that at this point, although, Watford and Wolves aren't, super good.
Yeah.
Doing it 3 times in a row, probably 4 if they don't get the red card. That's something that can't be denied. So it's going to be up to Tuchel to definitely try and get into that system. Do you think, like, overall that I know you said you hadn't watched a lot of them, but I think that Nuno is doing a really good job with them thus far. And I think that his ability to kind of understand the team's strengths and just stick to it and say, whatever happens, but we're going to stay in this system and we're going to rock with it. I mean, I like Nuno when he was at Wolves, to be honest, and I thought that was a good pickup for Tottenham.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think he did a fantastic job with Wolves. I don't think that Wolves had the caliber of player that somebody like Tottenham does. And I think that's where I don't want to say fell short, because there were big games that Wolves won while he was in charge. But I think his ability to mold players, so to speak, into a shape and have them see his vision is very powerful for a team. And the fact, I want to say they've stayed almost in the same shape, but he also has this ability to look at opponents and change the shape based on how they play and how they have played. And I think that plays a lot into Tottenham's favor. And with the caliber player they have, he is such a great fit for them because of his ability to have that overall effect of like, okay, well, they play this way and they tend to play down this side. Let's put our best players here and change that shape to close down that side with the players that he thinks can. And I think he's done a fantastic job with them. Do I think that in general, Tottenham is performing well? Sure. But when you're looking at games like Wolves and Watford, when they should be producing more, I think that's their biggest issue, is they're not producing enough quality options or quality chances. That's the word I'm looking for. Quality chances to give them that ability to score more frequently. And I think that's their issue, especially coming from midfield. And I think Lo Celso is a big part of that. Lo Celso is one of their best creators. And I mean, obviously, Hjoberg is a phenomenal creator as well. And they have such a great dynamic when they play together, Lo Celso and Hjoberg. And I think they're missing that. But for the most part, he's done great. I think the Palace game, when the card came into play, it really switched momentum for them. And they didn't really know how to mentally recover. So I think that's, I almost want to say that Palace was a fluke, but at the same time, I really don't think it is, just because of how little they've been able to produce quality chances.
And I think you're right. I think they're going to have trouble kind of almost against those middle to lower table teams. I think that they can set up great for a team against a team that's going to want to possess the ball, like a Chelsea, like, you know, your top 4 or 5 clubs. But then you're going to look at a team where Wolves or Watford is going to want you to possess the ball, and they're kind of confused on what the plan is, so to speak. It's either counterattack or bust for them. And luckily for us, going into the game, we were able, against Zenit, to really kind of stop their counterattack. They had a few pretty decent chances, at least one at the end of the game, and then they had the one where Rudiger had to make the play. So that kind of worries me a little bit, because obviously Tottenham have a little bit higher of caliber of player, and they can be equally as organized as Zenit. But if you're looking at it, I just think that there's also just like, you can have sports, you can look at the statistics and the averages and things of that nature, and you can look at the quality of players, but I just think Chelsea has that it factor over Tottenham. And I think that it factor is Lukaku. Not saying that Harry Kane is not a great striker, but I just think Lukaku is just at another level compared to Harry Kane. And people from England may, not like that because that's the English striker, but I just think the way that Lukaku is playing right now, it's like, when against the Zenit, people are saying it's inevitable. He is inevitable that he will score goals. So I think it's like, no matter what happens, if we don't create a lot of great chances, if we create a couple good chances, he's going to score. And that's so much different compared to like the last few years where you're thinking, oh, this is a good goal scoring opportunity. And it's going to be 50-50 if he's going to score, if whoever's going to score, goal scorer X, Y, or Z. But now with Lukaku, it's like anytime he gets the ball at his feet, I'm like, I think it's going to go in.
Yeah, and even when you look back to last year's games versus Aston Villa, I think is the best marker of that, of how having that elite striker who can utilize those chances and score the goals is such a difference. Because last year, if we were playing Villa the same way we played this year, I don't think it would have ended the way that it ended this year with us winning 3-0. Right. I don't. And I think I completely agree, I guess is the easiest way to say it, that Lukaku is that player for us, that especially when he's paired with those players like Mount, like Havertz. And I honestly can't wait to see him with players like Pulisic and Cho, and even like Ziyech. When you have those players along with great wing backs like James, like Chilwell. I mean, heck, you can even throw Cho back there as a wing back, and he's done a phenomenal job. Granted, I wouldn't prefer him to play there, but you have those people who can get the ball into him. And sure, a lot of people say Series A, like, oh, it's farm league or whatever the heck they call it these days.
Yeah.
But when you're scoring as much as he's scored, and even he proved it during the Euros for Belgium, like, give the man the ball with a good opportunity and he's going to take it and he's going to score. And it's made a huge difference this year. And I've always had belief in the team just in general with the talent that's there and what Tuchel has built. But with somebody like Lukaku, I think it will be very, very hard for Tottenham if he's in a position to get in behind the back line. Yeah. I think it's going to be very hard for him to miss, so to speak.
And you've seen, I think over the last few games, a lot of people have been saying, oh, well, Havertz or Mount, Lukaku's making these runs and they're not finding them, and I get it. And Mount had a bad game against Zenit, and that's fine. You know what I mean? And there's this whole like people get on Mount and then they get really sensitive because people are getting on Mount, and I'm like, that's just sports, man. Like it is what it is. Like if like you can get on a player if he's not performing well, in my opinion. It's not that Mason Mount is not a perfect player. He has amazing traits, and he can put masterclass performances out there, in my opinion. But it's also going to take a bit of time for him, Havertz, and Lukaku to all understand where they're going all the time. And I think that it's a little bit of both. I think it was a little bit about Mason was in an unusual position against Zenit, where he's not used to really playing in the middle up top with Lukaku. And then you have Ziyech, who they haven't played with at all other than training.
And he's occupying a space that Mason is used to. And I think you kind of noticed once we did sub Ziyech out and you didn't see somebody occupying the space that Mason normally occupies, he was able to create more and he was able to move the ball forward instead of back. And I think that's the balance that Tuchel is going to have to find, especially with so many phenomenal players for that midfield, whether it's Mount, whether it's Havertz, you know, whether they throw Lukaku and Warner up top with somebody, you know, like Cho, like Pulisic, like Ziyech. There's so many different players that they can combine, and they just have to find that balance. And I think because it was a new formation and somebody that they haven't really adjusted to, it was a little bit harder to produce it. And you noticed when they were comfortable, the momentum switched and possession went up and opportunities went up and shots on goal went up. So I think it's just a continuation. And if they're able to build that momentum and they're able to have a formation and players that they're all used to playing, and it's a very cohesive unit, I don't see how we couldn't win.
Right.
With just the way that they play together. And I mean, versus Villa, even versus Liverpool, you saw the way that they were starting to form that bond and starting to form that cohesion. And it worked so well. And I'm so excited to see where it goes for the rest of the season, especially versus top teams. I mean, I don't know if they still are, but at one point Tottenham was at the top of the table and they're still in that mix.
For sure.
So it's going to be a very interesting game. And I think Tuchel has a lot to think about when it comes to what he wants to put forward.
At very least, if it's not going to a top like opponent, you know it's going to be a top environment. It always is when you go there. Definitely. So now we get to go into the little fun part where people get to tell us how wrong we are. So, so we're going to talk about our lineups here, as well as our score predictions. So we literally have the same lineup, except I have Alonso at left wing back, and you have Chilwell at left wing back.
And I think for me personally, when I was doing this, my biggest contentions were Chilwell. And as much as I hate to say this, for Silva, for me personally, Absi has been playing great.
Yeah, this was my toughest one too. And I thought about this on the way home when we were about to record. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I can leave Azpilicueta out, to be honest.
But I just, especially like part of me wants to see, you know, like a 4-3-3 or, you know, something like in that like kind of build from the back. I just didn't think with the way that Tottenham sets up, it's going to be a good fit to do a 4-3-3. So I figured a 3-4-3 is probably our best bet. And it is so hard not to put Absi in because he has not only been playing phenomenally for us, but for Spain as well. Even dating back to pre-Champions League win and pre-Euros. Like he's played well. And that was definitely my most contentious spot. And I would love to see Ben come in and to be able to utilize his creativity and his ability to see the game and his just ingenuity when he's on the field and produce down that left side, especially with Havertz and Lukaku. I would love to see those three just be able to create magic on that left side.
Yeah, and I definitely thought about Chilwell. I kind of also when I made this lineup, I said, well, I feel like Alonso just kind of performs against Spurs. It's just kind of,
He does.
and I get it. It's almost like if it's not broke, don't fix it type thing for me. But, now I'm kind of considering in my head, I'm like, well, maybe that's why Chilwell didn't start against Zenit. It's very possible that, but it also, in my opinion, I feel like if he was going to start Chilwell against Spurs, he would have gave him more than 7 minutes to kind of get a run of things. I feel like he would have been of like a 70-minute sub, give him 20-odd minutes to really get himself immersed into playing. I mean, he hasn't played since the Champions League final, so that's a long time, and it's a difficult environment, so to speak, to throw him back into. I think also just in terms of that back three, I just – in my head, Aspie's played great, and I definitely, if they put Aspie in a Christensen spot, or if they put Christensen in the middle and Aspie at right center back, I think that's totally possible and maybe even probable. But Andreas Christensen is just undroppable at this point in my head. He has to play, and even if that means not playing Thiago Silva, I think that's something that definitely needs to be thought about. And I understand how good Thiago Silva has been for us. But I just
especially at his age.
Yeah, but he just hasn't like played a lot, I guess, this year. And
I was going to say, I don't think he didn't play a lot for Brazil either, did he?
No, he didn't even go over the international break, and he played a little
like dating back
summer.
He was still injured, wasn't he?
So he played a few games in the Copa America, I believe, with them this summer.
I watched Colombia mostly.
Yeah.
I love Colombia personally.
That's all right.
Preference country-wise. So, but I didn't remember him playing. Like, I think he started a couple of games, but I don't know if it's lingering from his injury or it's just the way that Rudiger, Apsi, and AC have been playing, because to me, that was probably the hardest decision, just for the way that those back three have created such phenomenal chemistry that it's so fluid just between, I mean, you could technically count all four of them: Rudy, Apsi, AC, and Mendy. It's a very fluid unit. But I think the difference with Silva is his leadership.
Sure.
You get it from the back end with a Silva and Mendy pairing, and then with Lukaku up front, who is very direct, and with Jorginho personally. I mean, especially with Conte injured, I think Jorginho really steps up a lot in that midfield, and it's so hard because we have so many good players that you could almost field two separate full 11 squads, and like there would be an argument for every one of them.
No, you're right. And part of me, now that I'm kind of thinking about it, and after kind of watching the Zenit game in full, I may actually put Aspie at right center back, because I think if they are going to play that low block, I think that pass to Lukaku for the goal is going to be something that they're going to want to consider. I'm not sure. I know Christensen scored that belter for Denmark in the Euros and whatnot, but I'm not sure what his passing is like, to be honest with you, in terms of just like crossing the ball in. I don't think I've ever seen him do it once, to be honest with you. But
I want to say most of it, and like even through the Euros in the beginning of the games, I want to say his passing for the most part has been pretty accurate. But I'm also one of those people who loves AC. And shout out to one of my friends, Harry, who literally has been saying for like a year and a half that AC is going to score his first goal for us. I really think that AC, like even with Silva, has become hard to drop, and I think his play has really improved.
Yeah, he's been fantastic. He's probably, I think it's difficult because I think a lot of people attribute our system to our success defensively. And I think that if you put one of these guys drop them in a different team, in a back four or something like that, I don't know how well it translates. I just don't know. I mean, I know they're all class players, but in this system, they're world class. They're fantastic. I mean, Andreas Christensen has argument to be one of the best defenders in the last calendar year, in my opinion, or at least since Tuchel took over. The only other thing that I had questions with, and I think that it's going to be a really hard decision for Tuchel is he did say in his pre-Zenit match that he is saving N'Golo Kante for a big game. And I believe that big game in his head is Tottenham. So say N'Golo Kante comes in and say he starts. Who does he replace?
Well, and I think I actually have this written down because I was thinking about it going through this, and I don't think Conte's injury was too bad in general, like when they were talking about it, at least the way I took it, that it wasn't this long spanning injury. But you've seen the way that Kova has played recently. It's kind of you kind of have to step back and think, well, Kova's played really well recently. Jorginho's been on fire.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just so hard. But I think if Conte is fit, as much as he's done well recently, I would have to pair Conte with Jorginho.
Mm-hmm.
I think those two in midfield in general are just it's an undeniable pair. They have such a great yin and yang balance where they have this ability for Conte to go forward and Jorginho to drop, and they just know to do it. Yeah. And I think that's where you kind of lose that when it's Jorginho and Kova. They want to play very similar roles. So I think we kind of struggle a little bit there in the very beginning with just those two playing because they're trying to adjust to each other and figure out how to play in the game. Whereas with Conte and Jorginho, they just kind of know.
Yeah. I definitely think we're going to see all three of them regardless. I can't see Conte if he starts, or if he doesn't start, I can't see him going a full 90 just because out of precaution. So we will see all three at some point. The order of operations, though, is a little hairy, but luckily we don't have to decide that. So that's not our call. So so a little bit about the score prediction. I went with 1-0 Chelsea. I was teetering on three different scores. I was teetering on 2-0 like you did, 1-0, and then 1-1. 1-1 kind of creeped in my mind because of the counterattacks that Zenit provided when we just possessed the ball. And I think Tottenham has more quality. And if Son and, Lucas and Lo Celso and all their guys are in Royale, I think that they could maybe score a goal. I'm not saying it's likely because our defense has been unbelievable. But I think somewhere in that range, if it's going to be 1-0, will Tottenham start to press the ball? Can we get a second one in the late minutes of the game? Definitely. I don't know. It's going to be like two. There's going to be no more than 2 goals, in my opinion.
Part of me wanted, and I sat there for a while thinking about this. Part of me wanted 2-0 just with the faith, especially with the way that I hope that we line up, we can create those, crucial opportunities. And with somebody like Lukaku up front, we have the ability to score them. But I also think even with the way our defense has been playing, there's so many good opportunities depending on how Spurs line up, their injuries and quarantine and all of that, that they have the ability, especially, I don't think except for the Zenit game, we've been as vulnerable to the counterattack. But I think with how quickly Tottenham can switch the game, especially on a counterattack, that it could be a liability for us. So I teetered with doing 2-1 or 1-1, but I have a feeling that our defense, just the way they've been so sound, I don't know if even on a counterattack that we're going to be caught off guard.
And especially if Mendy's on his game. If Mendy's on his game, it's going to be, if you look at the Aston Villa game, we probably could have given up 2 or 3 goals that game, or, at least 2, in my opinion. There was 2 great chances, but they were able, our defense, whether it was Silva coming up and stopping that one or Mendy doing his triple 360 saves, when he did, he stopped it, fell down, got back up, patted it out of the way. It was
Mendy.
Yes, literally. And it was amazing to see. I'm just really excited for this. Fans are back. It's a real test. It's you know, you go from Liverpool, you're down 10 men, and now it's like, okay, well, we know how to play on the road. We learned how to play on the road last year under Tuchel and be stout defensively and whatnot. I'm just really excited. I think it's going to be an awesome game. Anytime you play against Tottenham, it's going to be a fun one for sure. And, you know, hopefully we can get out of there with the 3 points. I would take a draw, though, like, just to be honest with you. Obviously, in a perfect world, we get all 3 points. I'd be a little disappointed in the draw, but it would kind of just depend how the game played out, sort of. It's tough to say, you know, without seeing the game, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think for me, with just the way that we played against Liverpool, especially down to 10 men, and how long we were down 10 men,
Mm-hmm.
to see how the defense and even the midfield coming back, you know, and their ability to defend with our defense, it's just hard for me to see us conceding. So even if we don't create any of those great opportunities for Lukaku or Havertz or Mount or whatever, because we know Mount can shoot from outside the box, Havertz can. We can, you know, God forbid we get a penalty and then that situation arises. But I think even if we were to get in a position where we are defending incredibly well and we can't produce, I wouldn't be mad with the draw. But I think that with all the tools that we have, it would be hard not to win.
I'm with you 100%. And I would be disappointed if we drew. I don't care. I don't care. I want to win. We're selfish. We're
I'm a winner.
yeah.
Sorry.
Well,
As an Alabama alum, like, I'm sorry.
I know.
I like to win.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Like when we draw, I'm like, I'm sorry, you did what?
Yeah.
Failure. No.
Exactly.
I think depending on how they line up, I think it would be hard for us not to come away with 3 points this week.
Yeah. Well, I hope you're right. Thank you so much for coming on. Absolutely loved having you on. Awesome. Really smart. Everything all the work that you were nervous about paid off. So
me and my notebook full of notes.
Hey, so it worked. It worked. You did a fantastic job.
Well, if you want to, for having me. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Absolutely. If you want to follow Brittany on Twitter, I put her link up or her handle up there. I'll put a link in the bio. Please do so. She's an awesome Twitter follow. Mine is up there as well. Please subscribe to the channel. Please like, comment, retweet, everything you want. That'd be awesome. So once again, Brittany, thank you so much. Hopefully we get the 3 points and up the Chelsea.
Up the Chelsea.